My daughter-in-law slapped me in front of my grandkids, then called me worthless. Hi, my name is Rosemary. I am 71 years old and I live in a small but beautiful little house in Savannah, Georgia. I have lived here for almost 40 years now. I know every neighbor on my street by name, and I know every crack in my sidewalk like the back of my hand. This is my home. I built my life here. I raised my son here. I painted my porch swing myself the summer I turned 60. And I thought, I truly believed, that this place would always be full of love and warmth. But lately this home has felt very cold. And what happened to me just a few days ago I still cannot believe. I am still shaking as I tell you this right now. I need you to understand that I am not a woman who causes trouble. I am not the kind of mother-in-law you see in dramatic movies. I have always tried to be kind, to give space, and to be helpful without overstepping. For 38 years I worked as a school librarian right here in Savannah. I retired 6 years ago when my knees started giving me trouble. I have spent retirement gardening, reading on my porch, going to church group on Thursdays, and babysitting my grandchildren every time my son Derek and his wife needed me. I have never asked for anything in return. Not once. I just wanted to be close to my family. Derek is my only child. I raised him completely alone after his father passed when Derek was just 11 years old. I worked double shifts some weeks just to make sure he had everything he needed. I helped him through college. I drove 4 hours to watch him walk across that graduation stage crying the entire time. I was there when he got his first job. And I was there smiling with my whole heart on the day he married Sabrina 8 years ago. Sabrina seemed lovely at first. She was pretty and confident and she made Derek laugh. I welcomed her with open arms. I cooked her favorite meals. I included her in all our family traditions and treated her like my own daughter because that is what she was to me. But things started changing maybe 3 or 4 years into their marriage. Sabrina would make cutting comments about my house being old-fashioned. She would roll her eyes when I offered parenting suggestions. She started limiting how often I could see the grandchildren. My grandchildren Ella, who is now 7, and little Noah, who just turned 5, are my entire world. Every time I made plans to see them, Sabrina would find a reason to cancel. Derek would call and say Mom Sabrina is tired, or Mom Sabrina has plans, or Mom Sabrina thinks the kids need more routine. And I would just say, okay sweetheart, I understand. Because I did not want to cause problems between them. But inside I was hurting more than anyone knew. I was missing my grandchildren so much it felt like a physical ache in my chest. I would sit alone in my living room looking at photographs on my wall, pictures of Ella as a newborn and pictures of Noah taking his first wobbly steps. And I would just cry quietly by myself. Nobody knew how much I was struggling. I kept it together because I am Rosemary. And Rosemary has always kept it together no matter what life threw at her. Then about 2 weeks ago Derek called and said Sabrina was going out of town for a work conference for 3 days and he had a critical project deadline and could I please come stay with the children. He said, Mom, I really need you. Those 4 words did something to my heart. I said, of course my darling, I will be there. I packed my bag that same evening. 3 whole days with my Ella and my Noah. I bought craft supplies and baked 2 batches of their favorite chocolate chip cookies with the rainbow sprinkles on top. The ones they call Grandma Rosemary special cookies. I drove over the next morning feeling lighter than I had felt in a very long time. Those first 2 days were just beautiful. We spread craft supplies all over the kitchen table and made the most wonderful mess together. We watched their favorite movies curled under blankets and I let them stay up just a little past bedtime because Grandma was there and Grandma believes the rules can bend just slightly in the name of love and good memories. Derek was stressed from his deadline, but he would come downstairs for dinner and visibly relax watching Ella and Noah laugh with me. Felt like old times. Warm and real and exactly how family is supposed to feel. Then Sabrina came back early. She was supposed to return Sunday evening. She showed up Saturday afternoon without any warning. The children and I were in the living room. I had Ella sitting in my lap and we were doing her hair in little braids and Noah was on the floor making engine sounds with his toy trucks and I was softly singing one of those old gentle songs my own grandmother used to sing to me. It was one of the most peaceful moments I had experienced in a long time. The kind you want to bottle and keep forever. Sabrina walked through the front door and I looked up and smiled and said, "Oh Sabrina, you are back early. How was the conference? We are so glad you are home." And I promise you with everything I have and God as my witness that is exactly what I said. Nothing unkind. Nothing aggressive. Just a warm hello from a grandmother sitting on a couch braiding her granddaughter's hair. She dropped her bag on the floor and stood still looking around the room. I could see her eyes moving from the craft supplies on the kitchen table to the blanket we had pulled off the couch for our reading fort. There was some glitter on the table from our project the day before, and she looked at me with Ella in my lap, and I watched something cold shift behind her eyes. She said, and I remember every word because they are burned into my memory forever. She said, "What is this mess, Rosemary?" I opened my mouth to explain we had been doing crafts, and I was going to clean everything before I left, and she cut me off. She said, "You always do this. You always come into my house and let these children run wild and act like this is your home. And it is not your home, Rosemary, it is my house, and I am so tired of you acting like it belongs to you." I stayed calm. I truly did. I said, "Sabrina, I understand you are tired from traveling and I am sorry about the mess. The children and I will clean it up right now." And I looked at Ella and started to gently lift her off my lap so we could begin. And that is when it happened. Sabrina crossed the room in 3 quick steps and she slapped me across the face. Hard enough that my glasses shifted sideways on my nose. Hard enough that Ella let out a sharp scream I will hear in my sleep for the rest of my life. Hard enough that Noah dropped his toy truck and burst into tears. Hard enough that I sat completely frozen on that couch, unable to process the fact that someone had just struck my face. I am 71 years old. In 71 years nobody has ever raised a hand to me. Not once. Not ever. I sat there with my hand rising slowly to my cheek and just looked at her. I could not speak. I could not cry. I was completely and utterly frozen. And Sabrina stood over me and said the words. She looked down at me and said, "You are worthless, Rosemary. You are a worthless old woman who has nothing better to do than interfere in other people's lives and make everything about yourself." She said, "My children do not need you. Derek does not need you. Nobody in this family needs you. And the sooner you understand that, the better off everyone will be." Ella was sobbing. Noah was sobbing. And I sat on that couch feeling something I cannot find the right words to describe. It was not just pain. It was not just shock. It was something much deeper and much darker than both of those things. Derek came running downstairs because he heard the children crying. He looked at them in tears and at me with my hand on my cheek and then looked at Sabrina. He said, "What happened in here?" And Sabrina, without 1 second of hesitation, said, "Your mother was upsetting the children as usual." She flipped the entire story upside down in less than 5 seconds. And Derek, my son, the child I gave everything to raise, looked at me with an exhausted expression and said, "Mom, maybe it would be better if you went home tonight." That was the moment that broke me far more than the slap ever could. I stood up slowly. I went to the hallway and picked up my bag. Ella ran and threw her little arms around my leg and held on tight and said, "Grandma, please do not go, please stay." I had to reach down and gently loosen her fingers one by one and bent down and looked into her face and told her that Grandma loves her more than anything in this world and will see her again very soon. Noah just stood in the middle of the floor with tears rolling down his little face, not understanding what was happening around him. I walked out to my car and drove home in complete silence. I went inside my house, sat down at my kitchen table in the dark, and finally let myself cry. I cried for the slap and for the cruel words. I cried for the way Derek looked at me. I cried for Ella holding my leg and for Noah standing there not understanding. I cried for every meal I ever cooked for that family, and every time I rearranged my life to babysit, and every prayer I said on my knees for that household. But then I stopped crying. Because I am Rosemary. And Rosemary does not stay down. I called my dearest friend Norma, who has been my closest friend for over 30 years. Norma was at my door within the hour carrying a casserole, and wearing her most determined expression. She sat across from me and said, "Rosemary, you need to write down everything that happened tonight. Every detail, the exact time, the exact words, all of it." Norma spent years working in social services and understands these situations well. So I got out a notebook and wrote down the complete account while every detail was still fresh in my memory. Then I called my nephew Reginald, who has been practicing law in Atlanta for over 15 years. I told him everything from beginning to end. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished he said, "Aunt Rosemary, what Sabrina did is assault. Not might be. Is." He said this is not a small matter and that I had options and he was going to help me find the right path forward. The next morning I called Derek. I had spent the night thinking carefully about what I wanted to say. I did not call to fight. I called because I needed my son to hear the honest truth from his mother, spoken calmly. I told him Sabrina slapped me. I told him the exact words she said. I told him his daughter and his son witnessed every moment. And I told him I loved him deeply but would not be treated this way and would not stay silent. There was a long silence. Then Derek said, "Mom, are you completely sure about what you are telling me?" And I said, "Derek, I am 71 years old and I know what happened to my own face." I said, "Ella was in my lap when it happened." I said, "If you have any doubt, then sit down with your 7-year-old daughter and ask her what she saw happen to her grandmother on that couch." Another long silence. Then he said he needed some time to think. I said, "Take all the time you need. But I am not disappearing." 2 days later, Derek called me back. His voice was completely different, quieter and heavier. He said, "Mom, I talked to Ella." He said she told him Grandma Rosemary was on the couch doing her hair, and Sabrina came home and hit Grandma and Grandma had not done anything wrong. He said Ella told him she was scared. He said Noah had been waking up at night crying. And then Derek said the words I needed to hear. He said, "Mom, I am so deeply sorry. I am sorry for what happened to you and I am sorry for what I said that night." He said he was in shock and made the wrong choice and was ashamed of himself. I told him I forgave him. Because I do. He is my child and I love him. But I also told him clearly that my forgiveness did not mean everything returned to normal without accountability. Sabrina needed to face real consequences. Not just for what she did to me but for what she did in front of those 2 innocent children. Reginald is now fully involved and we are looking at every option carefully. Derek spoke with Sabrina and from what he tells me she still has not offered any real apology. She said she was overwhelmed and that I provoked her. She said I provoked her by sitting peacefully on a couch braiding my granddaughter's hair and smiling when she walked through the door. But that is fine. Because I have my detailed written account. I have Norma who saw my condition with her own eyes. I have Reginald, one of the sharpest lawyers in Atlanta. And most importantly, I have the truth and a 7-year-old girl who told her father exactly what she witnessed. I am not doing this out of hatred or revenge. That is not who I am. I am doing this because Ella and Noah deserve to grow up knowing that what they witnessed was wrong and had real consequences. I am doing this because no woman regardless of her age deserves to be struck and called worthless. I am doing this because if I stay silent I am teaching my granddaughter Ella that it is acceptable for someone to hurt you and face no accountability. And I will never teach her that. Not while I am breathing. Derek has told me he is arranging family counseling and has promised my time with Ella, and Noah will no longer be controlled by Sabrina's moods. I do not know what the future holds for their marriage and honestly that is entirely between them. My purpose is not to destroy their marriage. My purpose is to protect my own dignity, and to protect those grandchildren I love more than my own life. Last Thursday I went to my church group just like every week. I sat in that warm room surrounded by women who have known me for decades, and I told them what had happened. Every single one of those remarkable women stood up and wrapped their arms around me. My friend Carolyn, who is 73, said, "Rosemary, you are without question one of the strongest women I have ever known." My friend Helen, who just celebrated her 80th birthday, said, "Honey, the way you have carried yourself through this shows more dignity than most people could manage at any age." Sitting in that circle of women who truly know my heart, I felt something come back to life inside me. Something that Sabrina tried to take from me when she stood over me on that couch. I remembered exactly who I am. I am Rosemary. I am 71 years old. I raised a son completely by myself through some of the hardest years imaginable. I served my community faithfully for 38 years. I have loved without keeping score and showed up every time I was needed. My worth is not something Sabrina gets to determine. My worth cannot be stripped from me with a slap and a few cruel words. I was worthy before she ever entered this family, and I will be worthy long after all of this is resolved. I am still here. I am still standing in my little house in Savannah with my flowers in the front yard, and my porch swing and my photographs on the wall. And I am absolutely not going anywhere. If you are watching this and you have a mother or a grandmother or any older woman in your life who has loved you fiercely and given you everything she had, please hold her a little tighter today. Look her in the eyes and tell her she matters. Tell her she is seen. Because nobody should ever have to sit alone in a dark kitchen at 71 years old wondering if they are worthless. Nobody deserves that. I will keep you all updated on everything that happens next with Reginald and with Derek and with all of it. This story is far from finished. And neither am I. Tell me where you are watching from and drop your city in the comments below. And if you love your grandma, if she means everything to you, please give this video a like right now, hit that subscribe button, and share this with your friends and your family because every grandmother out there deserves to know she is seen and she is valued and she is so completely and deeply loved. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. God bless every single one of you.